Hi, my name is Anise Barker, and I'd like to welcome you to Part 3 in a series looking at the 3R's curriculum, which is a comprehensive sexual education curriculum. Senate Bill 5395, which was signed into law on Friday, March 27th by Governor Jay Inslee, mandates all public schools in Washington state teach comprehensive sexual education, or CSE, to students grade K through 12. This bill was requested by the Office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction, or OSPI. OSPI sets educational standards for curriculum in Washington. 5395 mandates that all schools teach an approved CSE curriculum that meets OSPI standards for comprehensive sexual education. What I would like to do next is walk through the only comprehensive sexual education curriculum currently approved by OSPI for K through 12. There are other currently approved curricula, but this is the only one that includes K through 3 lessons. The name of this curriculum is Rights, Respect, and Responsibility, or you may know it as the 3Rs. This curriculum was written by Advocates for Youth, an organization that openly embraces youth sexuality as normal and healthy. We are going to be looking at grades 9 through 12. Let's get started. As we move through the curriculum, you will see the school grade we are discussing, and next to that is the approximate age of the children in that grade. Each one of the blue bullet points is a lesson your child will receive. Sometimes that will be the actual title of the lesson, and sometimes I have just listed the topic of the lesson to make it clearer. Each lesson is roughly 50 minutes of instruction, with male and female students receiving instruction together. This is no longer your 1-hour lesson on a Friday at the end of the day. There are 684 pages of instruction in this curriculum. Because of that, I am only able to show you a small portion of content. There is so much more that I encourage you to look at on your own. I will link to the full lesson plans in the comments below the video. I also don't summarize very often. The content that you will see is directly pulled from the lesson. This curriculum is a mixed bag. There are some good lessons, but there are some really awful lessons. I will be providing examples of some things that I found concerning. In 9th grade, your child will receive lessons on healthy and unhealthy relationships, effective communication, sexual assault and rape, sexual orientation and identity behavior, understanding gender, decision-making, sexual decision-making, STDs, pregnancy, and STD smarts. And just to note, the pregnancy lesson is not about actual pregnancy. It is about what to do if you become pregnant, such as becoming a parent, adoption, or abortion. In 9th grade, your child will receive a lesson. In 9th grade, your child will receive another sexual orientation and gender identity lesson. This lesson is about offensive language about gender. This language is flagged by a yellow flag on the board that means caution using that language or word. The teacher will ask, quote, "What names do we have for various categories of sexual orientation?" Straight, gay, lesbian, homosexual, bi or bisexual, queer, pansexual, and asexual are all terms that the class can come up with. A note to the teacher says, straight, homosexual, queer, and preference are caution words. Also included in that are sexual lifestyle or gay lifestyle and choice. All these words in yellow will be flagged on the board as caution words that your child should be careful about using in their language. Quote, "What we call ourselves is called our gender identity." And for homework, students are asked to watch one episode of I Am Jazz on YouTube about a transgender boy. Your 9th grader will be involved in more sexual role play during a decision-making lesson. The teacher is prompted, quote, "Then explain." The class will be divided into 5 teams. Each team will get a role play involving a couple that is making a decision about sex. Each group should read and discuss their scenario and decide who will role play the scenario. The other members will be coaches. The goal is to have the role play worked out so the couple reaches the decision quickly. Groups will have 5 minutes to prepare your role play, and then you'll act it out for the class." End quote. Here's an example of one of the situations. Quote, "Morgan, You and Terrence live in the same apartment building and are in the same homeroom. Terrence has dated girls and seems straight, but he also seems attracted to you. Last week you bumped into him in the laundry room in your building, and after a lot of accidental touches, you ended up kissing. But then he stopped and left. Now he just sent a text asking if you'd meet him in the laundry room. You decide to go because you want to have an honest conversation. You don't want to begin anything with someone who is so confused." End quote. Terrence, quote, "You date girls you like, but haven't done much sexually with them. You've kissed a couple of them, but didn't find it very exciting. Now you feel very attracted to Morgan. When you kissed him last week, it felt wonderful, but also confusing. You just can't stop thinking about Morgan and imagining his touch. You think you want to have sex with him, but you don't want your family or friends to find out because they would disapprove." End quote. There will also be a discussion of rape and sexual assault, and homework will be to find 2 websites that help with teen rape. In 9th grade, your child will receive a lesson on the dogma method for making decisions related to sexual situations. They will be asked the following question by their teacher. Quote, "When do you think someone is ready to have sex, either oral, vaginal, or anal, with their partner?" End quote. In this curriculum, when we talk about sex, it is always talking about vaginal, oral, and anal sex. Once your child has learned the dogma method, which is determine the situation, look at your options, gather information, make a decision, and act, they will be given scenarios to read through to apply their newly acquired skills. Here is one of the scenarios. Quote, "Kyle and Erica have been together since the beginning of 8th grade. They've made out a lot and know how to make each other feel good and haven't really had any complaints about that part of their relationship. It's almost the end of 9th grade and they both feel ready to start having sex. Neither of them has ever had sex with anyone else before, although Erica performed oral sex on the guy she liked before Kyle. She didn't tell Kyle because she doesn't think that's really sex. Kyle and Erica don't want Erica to get pregnant, but they're not sure what their options are for protection. Neither of them will have sex without some kind of protection." End quote. Again, the scenarios your child will be reading will normalize sexual activity and normalizing behaviors such as oral sex as age appropriate. In 9th grade, your child will receive the condom lesson. Below you will see listed the materials needed for this lesson, including latex condoms, enough for each student in the class to have one, bananas, enough for half the class, the teacher's guide, a handout for steps to putting on a condom, lubricant, hand wipes, and paper towels or tissues. The teacher will demonstrate condom application, and then students will be paired up to practice putting condoms on bananas or the styrofoam penis models that your school can purchase for this purpose. They will also have a discussion about where to get a condom in their community. For homework, your child is given the assignment to go into their community to obtain a free condom. If they cannot obtain a free condom, they can go to the store, stand in front of the condom section, take a picture of themselves, and then return to school the next day to show their teacher the picture of the condom aisle to prove that they know where to obtain a condom in their community. In 10th grade, your child will receive lessons on consent and coercion, birth control, rights of minors, communication about STDs, sexting, safe spaces in school for LGBT, and finding information online about sex ed. Your 10th grade child will be taught about affirmative consent. They will role play through several sexual scenarios, including Person 1. You've been with Person 2 for 3 months and haven't had sex together, but you really think it's time. You love the other person, they love you, and everything you've done together up until then has been really good. Person 2. You've been with Person 1 for 3 months and haven't had sex together, but you really think it's time. You love the other person and will do almost anything to keep the relationship going and make them happy. You really just are nervous about being naked and having sex. You like the way your sexual relationship is now and don't see any reason to make a change. This lesson is on how to give consent to sex. These are 15 and 16-year-olds. 15-year-olds cannot legally consent to a sexual relationship. Your child will receive another birth control lesson, which teaches information like, quote, "We typically tend to think of different sex couples as being the only ones at risk for pregnancy," end quote. Think about that. That's ridiculous. That is neither medically or scientifically accurate. They'll also teach, quote, "Since most birth control is geared towards people with ovaries and a uterus, how might someone who doesn't have those body parts feel about accessing and using contraception?" End quote. Females are now being referred to as people with ovaries and a uterus. Role play scenario in this lesson also features a bisexual girl who needs to think about birth control options. Quote, "Louise is a huge supporter of environmental issues and is president of the high school environmental awareness club. She's a distance runner, eats only organic food, and rarely takes medicine since she believes the natural approach is best. She's always been attracted to girls, but recently she's been flirting with this guy that just transferred to her school. She thinks he likes her too, but doesn't know where all this might lead." Working through this scenario, your child will be able to imagine themselves being attracted to both males and females. Your child will have a lesson on reproductive rights. They will read a story about a young couple that engages in sexual activity. The girl becomes pregnant. She goes to a clinic to get an abortion, but in her state she can't receive abortion services without parental consent. She then heads home to find her boyfriend and her mother, who found the pregnancy test, waiting to talk to her. In this scenario, the students must decide who in the story did the right thing. The girl? The boyfriend? The mother? The doctor at the clinic? The students discuss all types of reproductive rights that minors have, including obtaining birth control, STD testing, abortion services, and hormone therapy. Your child will also get a lesson on sexting. They will get to watch a video clip of a nonchalant 20-something-year-old guy who talks about all the ins and outs of sexting. He begins by saying, quote, "I hear the new iPhone has an amazing new sexting cam. Selfie cam," end quote. He does say that it's illegal to have and share nude images of minors electronically, but then says that some couples use sexting to make things sexier. He finishes out the clip telling the audience that, quote, "Sexting is here to stay, folks. It's easy to do, and our culture is beginning to change its views on nude images. The real issue is consent. Is this something that both individuals want to do, or is it something you are being pressured to do? If you think about it like that, then sexting is just another aspect of normal human sexual behavior and part of a larger discussion we need to have about consent." End quote. So in reality, this is just another lesson on consent. For homework, the students are told to go home and tell 4 other people what they learned in class today about sexting. In 10th grade, your child will be taught how to lobby for the LGBT community. The 3 learning objectives of this lesson are: 1. Identify at least 2 things their school does well around LGBTQ inclusion and at least 2 things they could improve upon. 2. Demonstrate an understanding of what advocacy and lobbying are and how they can be used to make change at school. And 3. Demonstrate how to make a persuasive argument for policy change. In 10th grade, your child will be sent to the internet to look for reliable sex ed information. Quote, "Allow a small group of students to access one of the following sexual health sites." Below is the list of sites that your teens will be sent to look for sex ed information. Let's look at a few of these. This is the front page of scarletine.com, where your student will find information on a brief guide to consenting with a nonverbal partner, how to access a safe, self-managed medical abortion, and reality checking mainstream pornography. Above you will see many topics that your student will be able to click on to find reliable sex ed information. Here is some more information from the Scarletine website, where your child can research stuff such as, "If I only want to have sex with women but not date them, ... or how do I ask a guy out?" Or What does it mean when a doc asks if I'm sexually active? The author of the Scarleteen website published the book shown below titled SEX, the All You Need to Know Sexuality Guide to Get You Through Your Teens and 20s. This is a how-to anything sex book. It contains information on everything from different types of sexual intercourse to gender to BDSM and sexual fetishes such as blood play. The book is recommended for ages 12 and up. This book also appears on a list of supplemental material that OSPI has assembled as helpful for teaching comprehensive sexual education. This is the Advocates for Youth website, the authors of the 3 R's curriculum. Quote, young people understand that reproductive and sexual health and rights are inextricably tied to social justice and the fight for liberation. Join thousands of youth activists and adult allies as we build a better and more equitable world. And it's time to let young people lead. Here is Planned Parenthood's website with information such as, are my vulva and vagina normal? Are my breasts normal? Are my penis and testicles normal? What are puberty blockers? What happens during puberty if I'm intersex? Also, lots of information about sex, gender, and gender identity and sexual orientation. And of course, there's always information on abortion. In 11th grade, your child will receive lessons on self-image and view of others, boundaries and consent, relationship abuse, what makes a good parent, and gender and sexual orientation. In 11th grade, your child will have a lesson on what makes a good parent. They get to think about what they believe will make a good parent and see if they qualify. It is implied that teens can make good parents, but should probably wait. They will also talk about gender and sexual orientation. Quote, and as you're going to see in a minute, our identity is more powerful than our physical bodies or what we do with those bodies, end quote. And also, quote, there's a lot of factual information about people of all different genders and sexual orientations, and there's a lot of misinformation, end quote. They will get to talk about all the misinformation that is out there about gender and sexual orientations. In 12th grade, your child will receive lessons on reproductive rights, sexual rights, STD testing, and sexually explicit media. In 12th grade, your child will have a lesson titled Sexual Rights, Who Decides? The class will study and role-play a fictional statutory rape case. I will summarize the case for you. A senior decides to participate in a secret senior send-off. The boy who finds the youngest person in the school to have sex with will win the accolades of his friends. The boy identifies a girl who is 14 in his school and pretends to like her. She engages in sex with him only to find out about the challenge. The boy is subsequently arrested and charged with statutory rape. The class will now role-play the courtroom proceedings. The students play different roles of characters in the story, including the prosecutor, the defendant, the judge, etc. The teacher will then lead the class in discussion by saying, quote, this story is about statutory rape. Although they have both wanted to have sex, the law says that the first-year student is too young to agree to consent to have sex. Do you agree? Was this rape? At what age do you think a person is capable of knowing whether they're ready to have sex and why? Did the senior student have the right to have sex with the younger student? What was the first-year student's rights in the situation? The teacher will then lead the discussion by saying, you'll notice that none of the roles was assigned a gender. How did you decide in your groups what gender your character was? What kind of impact would gender have? If gender of the first-year student had been different, would anyone have played their role differently? How about the senior? What about if they were the same sex? Why or why not? The last questions are very interesting because this year in the state of California, which already passed a law mandating comprehensive sexuality education be taught in all public schools, had a piece of legislation submitted that would set forth special protections for homosexual sex abusers. The bill would allow a person to avoid registering as a sex offender after a conviction of statutory child rape, as long as the abuser was homosexual and raped a person of their same sex, and the victim was within 10 years of age of the rapist. That technically could equate to a 17-year-old raping a 7-year-old, or a 20-year-old raping a 10-year-old. You would think that type of thought would be unconscionable, but with these type of lessons in our public schools, it seems only natural that this type of legislation would follow. And what responsibility did each of the characters have in this story? Your 12th grader will have a lesson on STD testing. They will talk about reasons why people may choose or choose not to get tested for STDs. They will also discuss the rights they have regarding STD testing, including confidentiality. And then your child will be given an assignment to research clinics in their community where they can receive free STD testing. Your 12th grade child will receive a reproductive rights lesson. This is an abortion rights lesson. The teacher will say, quote, "No matter how you feel about any of these rights or the laws governing them, the fact is that laws exist relating to whether, when, and sometimes even how we as human beings can reproduce. There are unique laws that specifically pertain to all of you who are under the age of 18. The best thing you can do is to hold on to this list of organizations as a reference so that if you are in a situation where you need to choose what to do about a pregnancy, you know what your rights are." End quote. They are then shown the situation of Damien and Belinda, who are both 16 and live in Idaho. Belinda gets pregnant, decides she's too young to be a parent, and doesn't want to carry a pregnancy to term if she is not going to be able to parent the baby. She doesn't want to place the baby for adoption because she doesn't think she'll be able to deal with knowing that her baby was out there if she isn't going to raise it. Damien is really against abortion and tells her he'd raise the baby if she didn't want to. She refuses. Things get heated and they break up. This is a father's rights issue. The father does not have the rights in any of these situations. This is about abortion rights, women's rights. During that same reproductive rights lesson, your child will be sent to the following sites to research their reproductive rights. You will see in this list the Guttmacher Institute, which is the research arm of Planned Parenthood. You will also find Planned Parenthood and Sex Etc. on the list, including the National Women's Law Center. And finally, in 12th grade, your child will receive a lesson on sexually explicit media, or pornography, although the lesson never does call it pornography. Students engage in conversation about the impacts of explicit sexual media in regards to their relationships. They will look at the images below in a slideshow format and decide why one would be reasonable for a grocery store and the other would have to be covered up. They will also talk about viewing this media to excess. And, quoted from the material, viewing any kind of media to excess, like playing video games, can be seen as compulsive behavior and should be checked out. This lesson equates playing video games with viewing pornography and doesn't call it an addiction, but it calls it a compulsive behavior and says that it should be checked out. Thank you for joining me for a look at content from the 3R's curriculum. More videos in this series, including content for grades K through 5 and 6 through 8, can be found on our YouTube channel, A Voice for Washington Children, or our website, 4wachildren.org. You can also join us in the fight against Senate Bill 5395 and comprehensive sexual education by joining the group Against 5395 on Facebook.